Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the channel. This is the first episode of a brand new podcast called The Sound and Fury. I'm your host. My name is Tim. What do you think I'm going to talk about? You want to take a guess? Probably some heavy metal shit, right? Of course it is. Today is July 23rd, 2025. It was announced yesterday that legendary heavy metal icon, frontman, Black Sabbath singer, the man himself, Ozzy Osbourne, passed away at the age of 76 years old, far surpassing all expectations of that man. I think most people, for at least, my whole life, are surprised that he's still going. But Ozzy, monumental. I mean, there are so many words and not enough words that we could use to say how important this man has been for this whole genre of music. Every single band that you see back here has been deeply inspired by this man. Of course, many more. He is the king. He is the king of metal. He was the king of metal. He will always be the king. He is the guy, right? He transcended heavy metal, becoming an icon of pop culture in general. Like, every single person who's been awake for 5 minutes knows who Ozzy Osbourne is. We love you, Ozzy. We will miss you. Things are definitely never going to be the same without you. And, I think what's really surprised me in the last 24 hours of learning about Ozzy's passing, I'll say it this way. Whenever a celebrity dies, there's always trolls that come out and say disrespectful shit just to kind of twist the knife in things. And so far, I haven't really seen any of that. I see just massive amounts of respect and almost no disrespect toward that man. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because this culture has become so disrespectful and turns everything into a shitpost, a joke, a meme. And yes, there are Ozzy memes that are out there. I'm sure people are having their fun joking about it, but 99.9999% of everything that you see being said about Ozzy right now is like filled with love, totally respectful, and just recognizing how important he was in life. And I think that's just a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing to finally see somebody pass away, somebody who's so important to so many people, and not have a bunch of fucking trolls coming out from under the bridge to sit there and have a laugh at the guy's expense. Maybe there are a few of them out there. Maybe you've seen them. I just haven't seen it. And to me, it's really nice to have that be a thing right now. I guess for it to everybody be coming together and kind of realizing, like, hey man, this is important, and don't be a fucking dick. You know what I mean? I like where we're at with that. So for all of you, I'm proud of you. I really am. I'm so fucking proud of like the wider community of heavy metal fans, rock and roll fans, Ozzy fans, people who aren't even fans really of this kind of music or of Ozzy himself, still kind of keeping it cool. You know what I mean? I think that's just, I'm so fucking stoked that it's not one of those things where people just immediately come out and start having to shit talk on him for something he did or said or whatever. Like, it's so, nice. I guess it's just, I don't know how else to put it. It's just so nice to finally have somebody who is leaving this world and not have a bunch of assholes with their fingers up behind him saying, yeah, good riddance, basically. You know what I mean? Usually with a guy like this, there's somebody out there who just has some nasty bullshit to say. If you remember if you were alive around this time when Dimebag Darrell was murdered, there was a Christian pastor kind of guy who came out and basically said some pretty vile shit about Dimebag Darrell and his fans, and I think fairly famously, Rob Flynn of Machine Head wrote a song about that guy. I don't even remember his name. He's a fucking worthless nobody, basically. He has no opinion that fucking matters, especially in this world, right? And I'm just not seeing any of that with Ozzy. It's like I don't see any fucking religious leaders or people who you might expect to come out and have something negative to say about the guy coming out and just spewing forth their toxic ass bullshit. And I think that's a huge indicator of the kind of guy that Ozzy was. And there's so many people out there who have been, you know, impacted by him. There's so many people who have been inspired and just love the guy. You know what I mean? And it's nice to know that Ozzy, even at the end of his life, you know, he did that final concert, the farewell concert, barely 2 weeks, like a little over 2 weeks before he passed. He got to go out, you know, and say, like, this is it, you guys. You're not gonna get to see me anymore. That's such a. This isn't an accidental overdose. He didn't just pass away from a heart attack or a car accident or something stupid like that. Like, he knew and told us all straight up, like, this is it. I don't have any more in me. I am giving you the last ounce of my energy to show you I would keep doing this forever for you, and I love you all. That is the most incredible thing for a guy like him who has already given us so much. I have said for a long time that Ozzy is essentially a kingmaker. Anybody or most people who come into professional contact and work with Ozzy in like a very strong capacity, they all go on to do pretty good things. Like, maybe not every single one of them, but all. I mean, think about this, okay? Look, with Black Sabbath, Kiss opened up for them, and Kiss became a pretty fucking big band. I don't particularly care for their music, but they're a huge band. Van Halen, their, you know, breakout came on the heels of the tour, the Never Say Die tour in 1978. And I believe, in my heart of hearts, I believe that Ozzy Osbourne saw Eddie Van Halen playing like he does, or like he did, and said, man, this is a new thing. This is something that's really fresh and energizing and really exciting. And I think this would be something that we should go in the direction of. And obviously, when he, you know, was fired from Black Sabbath and started Blizzard of Oz, the sound of Blizzard of Oz is way closer to Van Halen than it was to Black Sabbath, right? The riffs, the energy, the excitement, the pace, the tempo, everything's really upbeat, bright, colorful, kind of like, whoo! You know, like real Ric Flair kind of vibe going on there, if you get what I'm trying to get at, you know what I mean? Just continuing on with that, with Diary, with Bark at the Moon, with Ultimate Sin, you know, all of that stuff. And then Zakk Wylde comes in and it starts to kind of shift back towards that, you know, little bit groovier kind of vibe on No More Tears. It, you know, it got a little bit, it was still very polished, don't get me wrong, but there was some kind of old school vibes creeping back in, and then it really came into play with Osmosis, a little crunchier, a little groovier, right? Kind of hearkening back to that old school Black Sabbath sound. Just an incredible dude all around. And, you know, like I said, he giving Kiss a break, giving Van Halen a break, Metallica, you know, obviously getting... I don't even have to explain that one. You know what I mean? You should probably, you probably know. There's no reason to rehash that story, right? And then, do you know how Ozfest came about? Ozfest came about because Lollapalooza told Sharon that they didn't think fucking Ozzy was it anymore. They were like, nah, he's old shit. He's done. And they fucking said, fuck you, motherfuckers. We're starting our own goddamn festival then. And that's how Ozfest came to be. The first Ozfest was 1995, if I'm remembering properly. And guess what happened there? They launched the fucking career, basically, of Korn. Korn was on the Ozfest, and it was just like, boom, Korn blew up. You know what I mean? Like, whether you think that's a good thing or not, it is still a fact that, you know, Korn really got their start and reached a lot, their music reached a lot of ears by being on that early Ozfest. Same thing with Fear Factory, Sepultura got a big boost, and Machine Head got big boosts from being on those early Ozfests. I think Machine Head, if I remember right, Machine Head was on Ozfest. I know there was a lot of bands, right? And, that pretty much sparked, again, whether this is a good thing for you or not, but it kind of sparked the new metal thing. That's what new metal before it was like NU metal, right? It was just, hey, these are the new metal bands. There was this weird thing in the 90s where it was cool to misspell things. Corn, whatever, right? So all these new metal bands of the time, they were coming up, and that's kind of how it started. Like White Zombie and like I said, Machine Head and Sepultura, eventually turning in, with Cavalera moving on and going into Soulfly a couple years later. Fear Factory was a huge thing back then. And then, of course, Static X and, Mudvayne and all those, like, kind of the first and second wave of what we now know as new metal. Back then, it was just, these are new metal bands. It wasn't a genre. It was just, this is like the new style of heavy metal, right? So these guys all kind of got going, and then Ozfest platformed all that. POD came along, and Drowning Pool came along, and that's kind of about where I was like, I'm checking out of this one. And I went back. That was, I was 16 in 2001. So that's, where Coal Chamber and all that stuff started happening. I was like, yeah, this isn't really my jam. That's where I was like, all right, I'm going to do my homework. And I went back and I found, the Old Testament records. I went back and, I was even getting into like Skid Row at that point. Like Skid Row was well fucking done, and nobody thought that shit was cool in 2001. I remember going to school fucking playing Slave to the Grind and being like, this sounds like fucking Pantera to me. This sounds like Cowboys from Hell type shit. What do you guys, why is this not, fucking glam metal, I've always been a little more open to that, I guess, I was cool with Crew and shit. Whereas most of my friends were really, they wanted to go a little more of the death metal thing. I like death metal too. Not a lot, not all of it. I'm not a huge death metal fan. But, some of it's pretty cool, and it definitely has its moments. Obviously, I'm a Opeth fan. I'm a huge I love Opeth. Bloodbath and, all those kinds of things. I like the early Cannibal. I like Cannibal in general. I don't want to get too far off on all that. We'll get to what I like and what I don't like later on, but let's get back to Ozzy. He's passed. It is what it is, man. I'm glad I was around to experience him. I actually never did get to see him live in concert. Where I lived most of my adult life, they didn't come. Ozzy did not go to Boise, Idaho, as far as I know, for a long time. I lived up there for a while, and I don't remember any Ozfests pulling through. But, still have a massive amount of respect for the guy. I've listened to his music for the last 25 years. I was trying to think about it earlier. I was like, I wonder what the longest period of time I've ever gone without hearing Black Sabbath or Ozzy songs. And I was like, I bet you, if I could like rewind on my life and look back, I would highly doubt there's ever been a point where I went more than like 3 weeks without listening to some kind of Ozzy related music, whether it's his solo stuff or with Black Sabbath. It's just kind of been an ever-present thing. And I think a lot of you out there will resonate with that. There's probably a lot of you out there where it's like, I don't even know what it's like to live in a world where there's no Ozzy. Ozzy's always been around. He's been an ever-present figure in my life, whether it's in movies or, some kind of cultural visual, oh yeah, that's Ozzy. You can point to him and say, oh yeah, that's the guy. Or if, it's all up in here. You've been listening to Volume 4. You've been doing the deep dives into the albums maybe that aren't really all that popular, or the songs that aren't popular. It's not just a radio thing for you. It's not that you just listen to the singles. Like, what song is next on every album. You know, that's kind of how I am. Like, I'll I know Junior's Eyes. You know what I mean? I know Gypsy. I know All Moving Parts Stand Still. I know those songs in my head. I can think about them and they play. You know what I mean? It's wired up in here. It's not something that I have to push play on. Oh yeah, I remember this song now. No, like you say the name and I go, yeah, I know that song, right? So, not everybody's that way. Not everybody gets that deep into it. You know, for some people they respect Ozzy, but they're not really that into his music. They don't. I like Crazy Train. I like Shot in the Dark. I like, you know, the Flying High Again and Over the Mountain, and they know all those kinds of songs, but they don't really know like the obscure songs. Like they don't know Hand of Doom or whatever, right? They know Paranoid and Iron Man, but they don't know Hand of Doom. They know, you know, Sweet Leaf, but they don't necessarily know the Writ. You know, there's kind of like that degree of fandom where it's like I know the stuff that kind of gets put in my world, and then there's the people that go to the world, right? That's how I am. I'm sure a lot of you are like that as well. So if you're that kind of person like me, you go to the world and you just fully listen to it and you're like, I want to know everything about it. I want to know when the album came out. I want to know the story behind this song, or how this album was made, or what was going on with these guys at that time. How do you draw the evolution of this guy's life, you know, from, okay, this is the first album, and obviously they were kind of on this vibe, and by the third album they had shifted over to this, and by the fifth album they were kind of doing this other thing, and, you know, then the solo careers and all those things, and you follow everybody, even, you know, the guitar player, Tony Iommi. I'm sure many of you are deeply impacted by Tony Iommi, maybe even more so than Ozzy himself. If you're a guitar player, you definitely would be like, yeah, I've followed everything that motherfucker's done, all the Black Sabbath albums, the ones with and without Ozzy, right? I've gone and listened to the Iommi solo albums. I've gone and listened to the other things that Geezer Butler did, GZR, you know, Plastic Planet, the album with Fear Factory's lead singer. You know, kind of. I guess what I'm doing here is I'm kind of illustrating to you that I do probably know my shit maybe a little better than your average motherfucker out there, right? Obviously, I'm pretty into it. So, you know, just wanted to talk a bit about Ozzy, and again, kind of point out that I have noticed everybody's being super respectful and super cool about his passing. I'm not seeing a lot of shit talking and trolling and shit posting and stupid fucking disrespectful memes. I love that. I'm very proud of the fact that our guy isn't generating that kind of bullshit, you know. So anyway, I'm going to finish things up here. Thank you for checking out the video. I'm going to be back. I hope to see you guys back soon. Again, my name is Tim, Sound and Fury Podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that shit. And keep jamming. Later.